Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another, Friday update. Let me know if you can hear me. Good. Okay. So first, to all the folks in the southern part of this country who are now going through tough times with Florence, I hope you have all gotten out of the areas you were supposed to get. And if there are a couple people listening to this that I happen to know who have already talked about this, you really needed to get out. And if you can, still, get out soon. But that being said, let's go on to CU. First, start with the top 10. Little bad news for number 1. We're not going to be testing this weekend. Now, that's not so bad news because just like last week, we've been ripping stuff out and putting stuff in, and the build just isn't stable enough, and, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to run the last build because this new build, there's a lot of stuff in it, which now I'm going to talk about for the next 13 items. Number 2, design Mage classes. So Ben has finished the first trio of Mage classes. So we have, of course, the Flame Warden, the Druid, and the Moisture Mancer. No, I mean the Wave Weaver. We're calling it the Moisture Mancer, because, hey, it's a little bit funny. And I am almost guaranteed to trip up every time I try to say Moisture Mancer. But they look great. Ben is getting some work done with the producers to task things out. And when that's all ready, we will do a full presentation on it. And you'll get to see all the really cool stuff that Ben has thought of for this next class trio. Number 3, tech item, work in progress, skill parts, and statues. So, boy, what?
Statues or statuses?
Statuses. Whoops. Sorry.
I wasn't sure if
it was no, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I just saw STAT, and I had read it only once. Statuses. Okay. It's been a week. Staring at too many spreadsheets. So we've been building that out, and the real key here is that one of the things that we've been talking about for months here and with you folks is the continuing evolution of the skill system. As Ben builds out more and more classes, we need to make adjustments to, suit what his needs are and what our needs are, for the game. So this is just another part of it. Number 4, another tech item, work in progress, crafting UI. So, as you folks know, we had the first UI done, made with an awful lot of work by Me Huge and JB, and others as well. But hey, it's time to upgrade it. So JB has been spending a lot of time on that. It is not only to make it easier to use, but to prepare it for the next stage of crafting as well. Number 5, this is a big one, a tech item, work in progress Coherent. So we've been saying for months that we were going to rip out Ceph, which is the Chromium embedded framework that we use for our UI. That is going away. The guys have been working on getting Coherent in. Once Ceph is out and Coherent's in, that's, as I think I said this as well last week, that's the next and last big tech item that is, I guess it's a gate, you'd call it a gating, factor for creation of the 64-bit client. So yay on that, and we're getting very close to being able to get Coherent fully installed. Number 6, another work in progress item, the NPCs. So this is, kind of necessary, not all that sexy, but we need to, everybody, design, art, and at times programmers for testing, need a better way to create NPCs in the game. Obviously, they're a part of this game going forward, and so we've been working on making it much easier to create NPCs inside the game. Number 7, work in progress, design, crafting system. So yeah, I've spent a little bit of a foreboding a moment ago. A lot of time in spreadsheets the second half of this week, working on resistances, starting to work on infusions, building a calculator to make it a lot easier for us to go through for every alloy recipe we have now, but every alloy recipe we're going to have in the future, and setting up basic resistances for it, as well as other things, as well as other bonuses, requirements. Example, if you make an item out of a heavy metal, your strength requirement for using that weapon will be higher than it would have been otherwise. Same when you have resistances. If you use certain materials in the item, then that will convey a different bonus to the item when you use it. So we could do them all by hand, but as we go through all the alloys we're going to have, and especially the ones we're going to generate in the future, that becomes very hard to do, and frankly takes a lot more effort than it's worth, at least to get a first pass. So I'm building something that will allow us to do it far easier, and it's no extra work for you folks. It's automatic, but it will certainly make it an awful lot easier to create all the recipes, all the alloys, and everything else we're going to need for the crafting system, and have it work in a very balanced, well, you want to say very balanced, but gosh, what MMO has ever come out very balanced? As balanced as possible for a first pass. And then, as I've discussed with Ben, after we use the calculator in the beginning, then we go ahead afterwards and can tweak it, once we get near the end of beta. So that's in. At least some of it is in. Number 8, work in progress, characters 2.0. Okay, so this is a big deal. There's a bunch of items here. So, Scott has been working through additional prototyping to support the unique class idols with shared basic attacks. Tyler is wrapping up the previous prototyping to describe to engineering what we need to do to make this look good. Doing the same things that we talked about last week with topology, and Tyler and John have been working on, fun little things like hair, rings, and necklaces as well for characters 2.0. This is all part, once again, of making the game look better than we kind of said it would during the Kickstarter. And frankly, given how much time we've had since the Kickstarter, it damn well better look better. Number 9, tech item, light shapes. So Dave has given the artist the abilities to create light with different shapes. Obviously, that's kind of necessary if you want a much more believable lighting system for the game. And again, just another item that we have said and will continue to say that we will work on to improve over not only the next few months, but over the lifetime of the game. Number 10 is a music item, DB is working on transitions between various music levels and improvements to instruments to make things easier. Again, more immersion is good. Number 11, another odd item, the Deathmatch map update. So Dion is wrapping up her improvements to the Deathmatch map. This includes an art pass on the raised spawn areas and improvements to the general forest mod we use. And by forest mod, we mean what we build using our procedural generation system for the world. So that's all stuff that allows us to get these areas up and running far more quickly than we could back, for example, at Mythic when we had to design new areas for the game. Number 12, another work in progress art item, production. So this is Tyler, playing the producer and working to improve our workflow. Not particularly, again, sexy, but as the team grows and as we go through beta, kind of necessary. Number 13, a work in progress art item, the style guides. So this is also part of what we are doing to set up for the future and Michelle has finished an audit on all the weapons we've either concepted or have created, so that as we work on new weapons and new armors and other things, that artists who may be joining us in the future know exactly what to do as they get to work on new items. And finally, number 14, picked fidgets. Sandra is wrapping up the fidget animations to support the Pictish race. So that's it for the top 14. I'll do Q&A for probably a half hour. I want to get back and do some more crafting work, as a matter of fact, before the end of the day. So let's go.
All right. Scorpos87 asks, will there be the ability during character creation for us to change at least some of the basic look of our character, such as height, eye color, beards, hair?
We haven't spent a lot of time deciding what we're going to do in terms of things like that. We will definitely have some support for it. How far we'll go really depends on time we have and any effects on frame rate. We're always going to balance that out, because after all, when you're kind of focusing on large-scale battles like we are, every little extra time we spend on something that might not be necessary, we really have to be careful about. So will there be more options than there are now? Yes. How many? Don't know yet. We're really not focusing on that.
Odelvik says, Medic asks, when will the 4th announcement from January about backer rewards be made?
Soon. I think I had said back then that it was going to be timed around the release of the videos and our shift away from the refund plan for beta. So all that needs to happen around the same time. So we're working on obviously getting the game in a state where we can do videos and we can say to people with a straight face that this is the video that you will see in the game for the next few months. This is what your gameplay experience will be like. Andrew had a brilliant idea a couple months ago that I might have mentioned to you folks, that we may end up being able to create essentially a snapshot of our game that people can try on their PCs to see if it will run. So we want to see if we can get that all wrapped up. And again, it's all tied together. So you aren't missing anything by the delay. They all have to happen at the same time.
Caladex asks, will we see only the preset Mage's abilities and B&Bs for Beta 1, or a larger list of intended runes, shapes, etc. designed for launch?
Oh yeah, no, the Mages are being designed to be the first class that is using the new, newish ability crafting system. So yes, the intent is absolutely to have great runes, to have great components that players can use.
On the YouTube chat, Maitreya asks, will mages be able to restore their own blood loss?
You'll have to see. Sorry, that's the sort of reveal I'll wait for, a couple more weeks for Ben and I to talk to you folks about.
Brando2 asks, with the mage work being done, is that a confirmation that they are the next class added into Beta 1?
Oh my God, absolutely. There's a lot of work that we have to do to get the mages in. A lot of VFX work, sound work. Obviously, the ability crafting system has to be working properly. Yeah, they are indeed the next trio to come in, and they will come in with some really excellent and very lore. There we go. Affiliated, lore centric. There we go. Names and abilities. It's really kind of cool. I think you folks are gonna, really dig all the 3 classes.
By the way, you got a woot woot from Caladex. Drooged asks, can you cut this off now and go back to the crafting work? Just kidding. Can you tell us more about what you are doing? When
Sure.
can you share?
Sure, I can talk about that. So it's really very simple. Not easy to do, but simple. So what I'm doing is, if you look at how resistances and any kind of stat affecting item works in this game. When you craft an item, when you craft, it doesn't matter whether it's a sword, piece of armor, anything, the materials that are used help define all of its characteristics. So an alloy, which is made up, of course, of multiple materials, has to have these same bonuses attached to it. Now, how do you do that? What I did to begin with was just throw out a lot of numbers for the alloys. They didn't have to be accurate because, again, this is early beta. But as I went through it, I started to think, this is great now. It's very easy for me to do, but it's not really sustainable when we get to the number of recipes for alloys that we'll have later in beta 1, let alone live. So I decided, and I'm still experimenting with this, so I think this is going to work just fine, with a way of predefining all the bonuses for each individual component of an item, each material of an item, and then calculating what would be the bonus for that alloy based on the percentages or the amount of the materials used. So if you were using, for example, 98% iron and 2% carbon to make a steel alloy, this will do all the bonuses for you. So I won't have to, do them all by hand. Now again, it doesn't seem like much until you start thinking about how many alloys we have, and then the variance, of course, within an alloy of having different percentages or different amounts of material. And so, if you're doing that for 20 or 40 or 100 or 300, it's a pain in the butt, but it's still sustainable. But if you now multiply that by, what will be an amazing number of alloys that can be made, and then you throw infusions in on top of that, it is not impossible, but way too difficult to try to calculate each bonus by hand, for one person. It's just, it's a crazy amount of work. So I'm building a calculator that once I define the values, of the individual components, then it will go through, lay out, and generate the bonuses for materials that are made of certain amounts, varying amounts of those materials. So once again, it would take 98% from iron of the bonus, and then give you the 2% bonus for whatever is in carbon, and that's what your alloy would then be used, or would have, when you use it to make your item. So that's how it's supposed to work. So far it's working pretty well. I'm going to continue working on that over the next week, but it's in really good shape. It will be in really good shape by then, and frankly, is really necessary as we expand out the number of alloys we have, as well as just the number of recipes for basic items. Again, especially when you think about the variability that you have, because you can add different amounts of something, because you can add infusions. So, good and necessary step, and for the most part, fun. I enjoy it, at least.
Mr. Peace 84 asks, regarding NPCs, we know you want to avoid the headache of pathing, and spirit mages was your answer to it. But how are NPCs going to move around? Will they rely on a very basic / dumb pathing tech?
For the most part, the NPCs, will move around decently. Perfectly fine, perfectly how to say this? Perfectly acceptable for dumb NPCs wandering around, who you'll mostly, in the case of animals, will be using, to make leather, or hunting for special items within them. It wouldn't be acceptable if we were, using that same level of AI, for example, as a pet, with that, problem that certain games have had with pet pathing. So we're not going down that path. These NPCs, for the most part, are there to walk around the town, to be hunted by the players, and at times to guard, but the guarding won't be all that complicated compared to what they would have to do if you were, taking them all through the depths or taking them in other places like that, where pathing and being really good at it is kind of important. So we're still going down the path of having to avoid the kind of issues, again, other games have had, and Spirit Mages are still part of the plan. Ben and I were actually discussing that yesterday in terms of the remaining classes. Which ones should we do first, and then which trio should we do first, and what trios we could possibly even bring in ahead of time for launch.
Odovic says, Tinnis asks, how flexible will Bard song ability building be? E.g., chanters from Pillars of Eternity, where they selected a sequence of phrases to make a custom looping twisting song.
Well, we're looking at the support classes in the same way that we're looking at every other class. It's a component-based system. It's supposed to be very flexible. That's exactly the discussion Ben and I were having in regards to the Spirit Mages. What we were going to do with the Spirit Pet classes. What were we going to do with them in terms of giving them a lot of abilities like other classes, or fewer abilities but more control over their pets and giving their pets more abilities. So that's an ongoing discussion. I mean, I'm for actually fewer abilities for those basic classes, but making their pets have far more interesting abilities than you find in most, if not all, MMOs. But we'll see how that works out.
T. Veramod asks, will there be Vikings without big beards? I don't expect that for beta, but I hope you don't go for beard-colored shading of the cheeks.
If we have that option, I'm fine with it. I don't think Vikings have to look a certain way when it comes to their beards.
Malfiso asks, any time frame on ending BGs, I think that's Battlegrounds, and only having an open world 24/7 fight?
Oh no. Again, we are not at all planning on having open world 24/7 through beta 1. That's just not in the plans. Frankly, one, that would be quite expensive, as a matter of fact, and second, beta 1 is not for that. Beta 1 is for the testing of all the abilities, of as many of the mechanics as we can test to get the classes in. That's really important. The basic, classes in, of course, not everything through, the first 3 years of playing the game. That's what we have to focus on. That's the part that has to be fun. If it's not going to be fun, and I've said this before, if the scenarios aren't fun, when we get what we consider, final scenarios up, which obviously these aren't, if the mechanics that we're using aren't fun, then it makes absolutely no sense for us to go to open world. It doesn't make any sense for us, frankly, to go to beta 2. We want to get you folks in using the real abilities, using the real mechanics as soon as possible, so we can not only find any issues we have tech-wise, but design-wise as well. That's the thing. Open world is important, obviously, but it's not as important in the short term as it is in the long term. And the short term has to come, first, which in this case is using scenarios for everything from, siege battles, battles around, in the last case, but we're going to be removing that soon, fixed castles as opposed to destructible castles, to the idea of taking places of power, to other things that we're going to be testing and see if that works for you folks, and it works for us. Because if that's not fun, open world won't be fun. So let's get this first, and then we'll go to open world. Plus, one problem with open world, of course, and we also discussed this yesterday, is the speed classes. Anything, if you have truly our size of open world and no speed class or no mounts, we would have to give every player the ability to move faster, because in limited testing cycles or even long testing cycles, there'd be too many people who would get bored because they would come in at off times and not be able to find anybody. So short term, it's only going to be focused on these various scenarios and an occasional scheduled open world match where we can get a lot of people in, so people aren't wandering around there going, I can't find anyone to fight.
BUVV asks, with past games, we have seen how strong tanks can be at close range. What will you do to allow casters to survive? And will they be able to do significant damage at close range or only long?
Look, we've said this right from the beginning. Tanks in this game, you're welcome. No, sorry.
That was a good one.
Thank you. In this game, it's really important if we were going to have tanks, and for those of you who were part of our Kickstarter, you remember when we were talking about how do you make a tank relevant in PvE versus PvP. PvE is easy, PvP is hard. So the idea with tanks versus mages is, look, as a mage, if you're letting a tank get too close to you, you're in trouble. I mean, you need to be in trouble. If you are not in trouble, then tanks now lose part of the reason and people's desire to play them in the game. So, you know, if you're expecting as a mage that you can have abilities to slow a tank, to push a tank away, but it still gets close to you, and you'll be able to do a lot of damage up close and really have a chance, yeah, it's going to be hard. Tanks are not mage killers, obviously. That's always been the rogue in people's minds, roguelike classes, but don't let a tank get too close to you. That's the idea. They have to be viable in combat. They have to be viable as far as damage dealers as well, and not just as, you know, damage sponges for the mage classes. So again, it's not instant death, but, you know, part of your job as a mage is not letting them, you know, get too close to you, and also playing smart. Tanks have to be important. All classes have to be important, and that means since a tank's focus is up close, you know, and personal, it has to be effective up close and personal.
Syntheta asks, will we be able to use a few different skills for one key? For instance, tap for one skill, hold for another.
Actually, great question. I haven't discussed that with anyone. I don't see a reason why not. But that's actually, I don't think that's ever come up. So, great question. Well done.
Odilvik says Gunnar wants to know if players will be able to gain special currency through exceptional performance in campaign scoring. Not coins, but items to create rare gear, building blocks, or ability upgrades.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The rewards that you get for doing special things, whether it's, you know, as part of a warband campaign or just working for the king, you know, is part of the game. It's been part of the game plan, you know, right from the beginning. You know, when you look at especially what crafters have to do, since I've been very clear that crafters do not have to go into RVR in order to be successful, then they have to get access to some of the, you know, more interesting materials through both the help of other players, but also through the king. So, yeah, you're absolutely going to be able to get all sorts of stuff as rewards for doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is frankly having fun and killing other people. Gosh, are we a progressive game or what?
Bearbo asks, what is the state of building stability feedback, and will it be available to offline cube?
Let's see, the current feedback is actually we're having a perf issue right now with it, which is one of the reasons why we probably won't have a test this weekend. It certainly doesn't look like we will. And second, that is something we have talked about for offline cube, but we haven't done anything with. Because frankly, in order to make it work with offline cube, you have to be able to run your own physics server, an embedded physics server, to calculate and deal with this stability, a stability server, to deal with that. And I don't know what the current state of those discussions in tech are. But it's not our focus right now.
Jack Mode asks, what if the game ends up being too complicated? Body part system, variety of magic types, ability creation, it's a lot. If all the granularity ends up not being fun, will CSE be able/willing to pivot?
Hey guys, guys and gals in the chat, you can answer that question yourselves for him or her, or insert your pronoun. Let's see if they do.
Rocket Mist says, MJ is the king of pivot.
Yeah, and that's the answer. I don't give a damn. Honestly, you know, there's so much that I've come up with or other people, Ben and others have come up with. The bottom line is we're making a great game. We're not, or trying to make a great game. We're not trying to make this an ego boost, you know, for myself or Ben or anyone else. I'll toss out anything. I don't want to curse on stream, but there's a wonderful F word that goes, I don't blanking care. Because I don't. I really don't. I will take out any feature of this game if I don't think it's fun. And my ego will not go all hurdy-hurdy if I decide or the players tell us this isn't fun. It'll be like, okay, we screwed up. Let's find an alternative. Now, having said that, you know, when it comes to the body part system, let me be incredibly specific about that. That is something Ben and I have discussed. We're still discussing it. We want to see how things go. It is certainly the first on the chopping block of features that I'm more than willing to let go if it turns out that they're not fun. Or they may be fun but just too complicated for people to, not to use, but to enjoy playing. And it's kind of hard, you know, to find the right words to describe what this actually means. Because on one hand, it can be fun, but it can also be a pain in the ass so that the fun after a while starts to subside. And I'm sure you folks can think of games where a lot of it was fun, but sometimes the way you had to play it or the effort that was involved started to detract from the fun. So I don't really care. You know, anything can be taken out of this game if it's not working for the players. If it's not fun, it goes.
Helzek asks, will Air develop in tandem with Mages or as a prerequisite to Mages?
Oh, it in tandem. You know, that's also one of the things I'll be turning my attention to probably after I work on this, is the interaction tables for Air, you know, for the next version of Air. So that's something that I am really looking forward to. Air is such a cool concept. Obviously, I won't be like certain other devs who go, that's our idea. No, you know, this has been used in games for a long time. I used it in, you know, one of my second MUD. But it is cool, and I can't wait to see it back in the game. You know, when abilities really start interacting that way, that's just going to be way cool, especially for keep sieges. It's going to be awesome.
Muerta Grease on the YouTube chat asks, the Castle of Malbork is divided into 3 parts. High Castle for the Knights, Middle for Mercenaries, Low for the Crafters and the Stores. Can you speak a little about the space for the materials?
Means stored materials, I guess?
Is
that what it means? So I'm going to assume you're talking about spaces for stored materials. You know, we're going to be pretty open. No, not open. Wrong word. Loose with that. You know, we said right from the beginning when it comes to vaults, when it comes to, you know, bags, the whole encumbrance thing versus the whole volume of space that can be occupied by the things you're storing is meant to be easier and less draconian on the players. So we want you to have plenty of space for things. We want you to be able to store lots of your materials there, because frankly, you'll be taking a risk when you do that. When you build these structures and you store things, well, maybe people too, who knows, out in them that can be taken by other players, there's a risk of loss. So if we give you the freedom to do that, and then you lose because of it, that's part of the game. So that's a balancing act that you guys will always have to decide on. but the idea is certainly not to make it so silly that I won't mention it. A certain game that I'm playing that does just this, that you have big spaces that seem to not be able to hold anything, because that would be silly. So yeah, don't worry about that. I can't imagine that's going to be an issue.
Sacrix asks, how do you feel about combatants in general being left behind with the gameplay / prototypes not matching design? When will this area catch up? Will it be only when Ability Builder is back?
Not sure I understand what you mean. I don't see how we're leaving behind anybody. We're testing various abilities. We're testing the ability system itself. We're testing mechanics. So, not sure what you mean by left behind. You know, we set out in this beta, you know, and we said what we were going to have to begin with. And then, you know, once that's done, we're going to be bringing in other classes. We wanted to get the mages in, and we're going to get them in. They won't be left behind. They'll still be, you know, able to be played. So, you know, we'll just rework them as we continue to move forward. So I don't agree with the left behind thing.
You know, we get the 5-minute warning?
No, we can keep going.
All right. Not quite 5-minute warning. Let's see. Oldovik says, Dutch Aries asks, will most of the abilities be 1, party members only, 2, more effective when cast with party members, 3, not bound to party members?
It depends on the class, obviously. You know, and you've left out a few things too there. Look, the abilities that the various classes will have to have a wide range of effectiveness. And it's not just they're more effective on your own party members. Again, there's a whole another layer of things that are going to be important, whether it has to do with air, whether it has to do with weather, time, all of that. So I don't know how else other to answer that, other than to say we want, part of the reason we're doing what we're doing with the ability system is to give us the kind of functionality that almost no other MMO or certainly game has had in terms of creating abilities that are supposed to be used in very unique situations.
Alrighty. Jack Mode asks, what if a realm doesn't have enough crafters / builders? Are there fail-safes in place to allow them to stay competitive, or will it be up to the players to rectify the situation?
Well, obviously there's no fail-safes in place right now, but there will be. We've said this right from the beginning. We want to encourage crafters to come in. We'll continue to encourage them to come in after the game starts. On the other hand, if there are not enough crafters there, we will absolutely put items into the stores for people to buy. You know, as well as, and this is what I did in both my mods actually, the ability to just go to a store and you know, have a weapon designed for you by the store. Do we want to do that? No, we hope the crafters in our game will be very supportive of, first of all, having a class, and then being important so they'll want to play. But if the things that we do can't bring in enough people, then of course we'll find ways to make sure that the stores, you know, are full and that the realms are equivalent, relatively at least, to the realms that don't have enough crafters, there we go, are roughly equivalent to the realms that do have enough crafters.
Here's a different perspective. Tivermod asks, with crafting, will you always have to carry that wet sponge of a crafter along to get the best materials extracted? Or can an explorer type or whatever gather the really good stuff in good quantities?
Wet sponge, nice. No, yeah, the answer is yes and no. So, in order to get some materials, you'll absolutely have to have crafters. There's just no two ways about it. Certain materials can only be gathered by them. They have to have the right abilities to gather them. Non-crafters won't even see some of the things that need to be gathered. So you will not always have to drag one along, but if you want to get certain materials, you will need crafters. I mean, that's part of the, you don't want to say forced interaction, because it isn't forced, but encouraged between combatants and crafters. Fortunately, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think, especially when it comes to the depths, there'll be so much incentive to bring crafters in, and so much incentive for them to come in, especially after it's been taken by one of the realms, that won't be. I can't imagine that's going to be a problem. I really can't.
Scorpo67 asks, I have asked about realm ranks in the past, and you've answered that quite well, but I forgot to ask whether there is any plan to also have RAs, kind of like in Deac.
Again, it's the exact same answer. Everything in this game is essentially a realm ability, because this is all stuff you get from participating in RVR, from helping your realm. So will there be special abilities that you get for earning certain ranks, for doing certain things? Absolutely. But it's still all part of the same system. Deac's realm system was great. It was fantastic. We hope what we're doing here, will be better, or at least different and similar at the same time. Different in that, of course, nothing in this game, nothing leveling that a combatant does is based on PvE. It's not based on things you can buy. I'm not obviously referencing Deac with this one. It's all going to be earned by you just playing the game, and whether it's because you unlocked it, because it was part of a skill track, or you unlocked it because the king gave you a special ability, or if you unlocked it because you found something special in the depths. There's all sorts of ways that you're going to be able to progress your character down the road that are geared solely, again, to the focus of this game, which is RVR.
Axakal 01 asks, can we pick our class's boons and mix them with other banes, like racial banes or others?
Well, you can already mix, banes and boons. Can you mix racial banes and boons? Racial banes, and how I envisioned racial banes and boons, is that those should be fixed. Those should be things that you don't get to choose, because that's the negative side of playing, or positive side of playing a race. The class bane and boons and additional banes and boons that you could, well, class ones also come with that, but any additional banes and boons you choose should be just things that, again, you can choose. Back to our choices matter. If you decide to play, Diverger, and the Verger has a boon due to its size and a bane due to its size, you shouldn't be able to say, well, I don't want the bane that's due to its size because I don't want it, because you're playing a Diverger, so it kind of has to go along with that. So, class bane and boons, racial bane and boons, regular banes and boons, these are all different. Some are going to be locked, others won't be.
Maitreya on the YouTube chat asks, since we're talking about spirit mages, excluding siege spells, how will their range compare to mages?
We haven't actually talked about that yet. My gut is that mages will have the greater range when it comes to, things like, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because you can consider you might consider some of the spirit pets, because there will be a wide range of them, to be closer to projectiles than actual animals, but others won't be. So, what can I go out on a limb and say? Expect that the mages will most likely have the longest range of any of the classes other than archers. Spirit pets in general will be shorter range, not close up, but shorter range. But they might have some, very unique longer range abilities. But Ben and I have not gone through this all yet, but I have a few ideas in my head for kind of interesting long-range spirit pets and spirit pet abilities, but they won't always be useful necessarily in sieges. It's confusing.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Odilvik asks, will we see crafters specialize in particular materials, silversmith, goldsmith, etc.?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a follow-up.
Oh.
How much better would their items be versus a similar item from a generic crafter?
So keep in mind that it's not always about how much better it is and how much better an item is. It's how long it might take you to make the item. It's how much cost it may take to make the item. For example, if you were taking a goldsmith, a high-end goldsmith could take and use a smaller amount of gold to make an item than a less experienced one. It would also take him less time to make the item than a less experienced one. This is all part of that horizontal progression that I've been talking about for far too long at this point. But it's an important thing to keep in mind. Horizontal progression only works if you have enough differences, whether it's a class ability like swinging a sword, or a crafter ability, and I shouldn't say a class ability, combatant ability, excuse me, or a crafter ability like making the sword. There has to be enough options there to make players make choices about how they want to specialize and to keep them interested. If everyone can make a sword in the same amount of time, or if everyone can use the exact same amount of material, or if everyone can put the same bonuses on a sword, the crafters aren't unique. Same with combatants. So part of my job and Ben's job is to come up with enough ways to give you choices that the horizontal progression system really works. And if you look at, right now we've got about 72, I think, different stats on an item, which is a crazy number. But frankly, it's going to grow bigger. That gives you, as crafters, an awful lot of different ways to specialize. So it's not just always about making it better, but it is about being different, and your ability to do your or play your class will be different from other people's. It's not the same experience. So that, it's one of those things that people might like, some of them might not, but I do think that giving you all the choice of, as you level up, focusing on certain areas or certain abilities, so that you can really decide if, yeah, you know what, I don't mind if it takes a little longer to make my items. I'd rather use my points, and specialties here. I think that's going to work out really, really well. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about what you could potentially do as a crafter and how you can specialize your crafter class. And by the way, the crafter class, of course, is going to be one of the next ones we do for Beta 1.
On the YouTube chat, Maitreya asks, will classes other than the speed classes have group speed buffs?
Maybe, but we're focusing obviously on the support classes, or we'll be focusing on the support classes for now with the speed buffs. But certainly, the Spirit Pets class could have a speed buff associated with it. Other classes might as well, thinking ahead. But the ones who are going to be best at it, at least for now, are certainly going to be the support classes. That's one of the reasons, obviously, for their existence.
Helweir asks, just to clarify from last week's Q&A, builder tiers are remaining exactly the same and there are no additions or changes coming to them aside from no refunds?
Oh, no. We're going to add some more things for the builders tiers as well. We're just not doing it yet. We promised our builders that, they're going to what's the right word? That's probably be rewarded as well. So be rewarded as well for their patience, just as we have our founders. The only reason we're not doing it now, and I need to say this really carefully, so excuse me. The only reason we're not doing it now is because we want to focus on making the game, not on attracting more donations for a game that is not obviously going to be finished this year. I don't want to do that. I know other games do that. We're not using that tactic to attract new backers. That is not of interest to me. That's not of interest to Andrew. It's not of interest to our investors as well. Do we want people to donate? Of course, it's great. We love having more people come in, but we're just simply not going to do what some other games do. So when we've earned the right to do other things, then we will. But we haven't earned that yet. And when we will, I pretty much guarantee that our builders, especially the longtime builders and our longtime founders, will be very happy with what we do. But not yet. Not till we've earned it.
Caladex asks, for people who don't want to play a glass cannon, but do want to play a mage class at launch, will we be able to spec classes in the mage trio to be less glass cannon-like and have a bit more in terms of life tap, CC, and general survivability?
The term glass cannon, I know you know what it means, but you could have those abilities and still essentially be a glass cannon. If you look at Warhammer, certainly, and you look at other games where, the mages couldn't take any decent hit before they died, that's really a glass cannon. Our intent right from the beginning is that none of the classes are meant to be glass cannons, even the crafters. Mages will be powerful. We've said that. They will have drawbacks to that power. But the idea of the traditional idea of a glass cannon, of somebody who's just hucking, these super powerful spells and can die if you breathe on them the wrong way, is not something we're focused on here. Survivability is important in an RVR game, especially an RVR game that doesn't allow you to pop right back up and instantly get back into a battle. So I think our approach is the right one, which is that, mages will certainly and have to be more vulnerable to certain types of attack. They can't safely wear the heaviest armor in the game, obviously. They have to stay away from metal. Metal and mages is not going to react well. That's actually, part of what I'm working on with the resistances, for example. Oh, look, steel. Oh, look, various magics. Oh, yeah, that's a big penalty there on the resistances and things like that. So, I think you'll find that our mages should be more survivable, and their very powerful spells will be more group-focused, which is the whole idea. So, and by group I mean them working as a group, not group kind of AoE spells. But the ability of mages to combine to create these very powerful spells that we need for sieges in the game. So I think you'll like how it comes out. At least I'm hoping you will.
5-minute warning now?
Yeah, 5-minute warning.
All right, 5-minute warning, folks. Sacrix asks, when can we expect gameplay to match up with design prototypes like Ability Builder being back or Healing Vision and being fully able to test body parts?
Now, there's a great question. Thank you, Sacrix. So, obviously, Ben's laying out, the Mage trio, as I just discussed. We'll be getting back to the Ability Builder shortly. All of this is tied up in the technical changes we're making as well. We have to get past those. We got to get to the 64-bit client. As soon as we do that, we'll have some additional bandwidth from people to do more with with the skill system. So it won't be long. We're expecting, again, the 64-bit client not to be a nightmare, but we'll see.
Hibiki Fox asks, when the NDA lifts, will City State leverage the Twitch drop system to encourage streaming and viewership by rewarding the streamer and viewers with in-game items like dyes or materials, or even special event or promotional items?
So to be very honest with you, I don't know what the Twitch drop system is. That's how little I've focused on it. I'm sorry. I'm so ashamed. I probably should have. But will we partner with people? Absolutely. Will we give special prizes? Possibly. But it can't be anything that affects balance in any way, nor can it be anything that, in general, you don't want to always, as you folks know, I hate saying this will never happen, unless I know for a fact it will never, ever happen. But it shouldn't be something that players who are not part of that system can't get. I'm all for, giving out rewards for people who help us, but it shouldn't be anything that the people who've backed our game can also get, because that would be kind of unfair, especially to folks, who've, whether they're, founders or builders, who've been with us for years. So that's something we will look at. We certainly want to encourage people, to join us once the NDA lifts, but we have to do it in a way that's respectful to all you folks. I've certainly seen a lot of examples of games who've done the exact opposite, and we're not going to do that. So yes to encouraging people, yes to partnering people, yes to potentially some prizes, no to prizes that would not be earnable, achievable, givable to the folks who have backed us for also whether it's from the beginning or even after the beginning. We need to remember that without you folks, we wouldn't be here, and as always, I'm grateful for that. So unless you have a really great question, that was a great question. Do you have a great one, you think?
I think it's pretty good.
Okay, one more, and this is a max special.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Brando2 asks, with the Beta 1 hurdle jumped over, what is the next hurdle, and what challenges do you guys have to overcome to jump over that one?
Okay, great question. You're right. Okay, so obviously the technical challenges. We've been talking about them. One down. We're working on the next, and then the third one, of course, is the 64-bit client. Those have to be done before we can get to some other things that we want to do. So those are certainly the most immediate hurdles. Another hurdle that is still obviously a work in progress is building destruction. That is something that Andrew's been focused on. Rob, other people have been doing work on, and will continue to do work on. That's hugely important for us going forward. We have to have the kind of building system that we said we would have working in Beta 1. Everyone is confident that we can do it. Certainly no one else has done what we've done, and I like our confidence, and I have absolutely no doubt that we can do it. But, and there's always a but on this one, if we can't, at least there's a fallback. And the fallback is also a good one. It's just not as cool as what we have now, which would be, instead of using little blocks, we would use larger templated pieces like almost every game uses, and that would be really easy for us to do given what we've already done, but nobody here thinks that will be necessary. So that's the next big one. After that, obviously, or at the same time as that, depending on how things go, we have to get the ability building system back in. So that's obviously a big one. We have to get some tools done for the team, especially for poor Ben. Thankfully, I haven't heard him muttering to himself, talking about how much he hates XML. So that's good. But the sooner we can get him out of having to do that, certainly the happier I'll be. Boy, what other big hurdles? Hmm. Nothing else really in terms of, big hurdles, things that, you look at and go, this may take time. Everything else after that, it's not, don't want to say we're on an easy glide or a glide path, because we're not. But certainly the challenges in front of us, so that's a good way to say it, the challenges in front of us are less challenging than the challenges behind us. And that's a really good thing to be able to say. So, yeah, I think that, that really does encompass the things that don't keep me up at night, but certainly things that are more challenging. But the good news is, we can destroy buildings in real time and network them, across all the players. We can have lots of blocks falling down. Or being damaged and then falling down, and then the blocks that relied on them then falling down, and that's a nice accomplishment. Again, no one's done this. Sorry, no game I've seen has done this in the kind of way we're doing it. So that makes me feel good. That ours is moving along so well. And the technical challenges, like now ripping out Ceph and putting in Coherent, that's a known issue, and we'll deal with it. Same with the 64-bit client. There's nothing particularly, from what Andrew has said, technically challenging about it. It's just a bunch of work that needs to be done. So, that makes me feel really good. The things that we're doing well, we continue to do well. And the things that are hard, obviously we've made a lot of progress on. So I'm excited. I think we are in, really good shape. We continue to scour, which is a great word, both Seattle, Virginia, and every other damn state in between, looking for people who are willing to move either to Seattle or Virginia. We are continuing our efforts. We had having lots of interviews. I'm having lots of interviews with people. We continue to be picky and reserve spots for the people who really will fit in. But that's, that in some ways is a bigger challenge than almost anything else I mentioned. So if that's the worst thing that we have to deal with, we're in pretty good shape. And, I am really looking forward to the end of this year, more so than I have in really most previous years, because by the end of the year, unless something really surprises us, 64-bit client is in, all the other technical challenges I've mentioned are in. Hopefully we have some additional people who are with us at that time. We'll be moving through, beta 1 to a more game feeling stage of beta 1, which is great. And, looking forward to just a lot of fun. And I'm also looking forward not only to getting the crafting system to the next stage, because as I said right from the beginning, crafting on day 1 of beta 1 was really meant just to take a bunch of stuff, mash it together, check out, and make sure we could make lots of items without things blowing up, and going through a very simplified version of crafting. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to the next stage of it. And then I'm looking forward to, on a personal level, getting back to design some races and maybe some new class ideas. I've got some race concepts running around in my head that I think I might start writing up this weekend. It was one of those wake up, hey, I had a thought, and now I want to, apparently it's trying to come out. So I may have some race ideas in the coming weeks to discuss. So that's it. Thank you all, as always, for your support. Thank you for your patience. We'll let you know, of course, about if there's any testing this weekend. If not, hopefully we'll be, restarting testing next week. like I said, we're ripping out a bunch of things and replacing them. You know, this is not unexpected, and it's all good. I mean, the stuff, and I think I've told you folks this before. I'm 99% certain I have. Part of the next few months for us, not only is adding things, but repaying the tech debt that we incurred getting into beta, which is, again, ripping out things that need to be ripped out. We don't want to do that later. We do it now. We do it in a way so that we can get in not only other things, but so that then we can focus for the rest of beta, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, on just making the damn game, because all the tech is where it has to be. And if we do that now instead of later, it means that we'll have a much more manageable remainder of beta to going live, and less likelihood of any additional delays due to the fact that systems that we should have fixed months ago, we didn't bother to fix until late in the game. That certainly happened to other teams. We don't want to be in that position. So again, as always, we thank you. For those of you who are again in the southern part of the U.S. who are hearing this, please stay safe, be careful. If you're in Florence's path, 4 people have already died apparently in that area. So be smart, and stay dry, and please do stay safe. Have a great weekend, everybody. If there's testing, I'll see you in the game. If not, I'll see you next week. Bye.
See you later.